Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Living Water Christian Church. Let's stand together and we will begin our worship time. I'm ready. One, two, three, go. Who breaks the power of sin and darkness? His love is mighty, so much stronger. The King of glory, the King above all kings. Who shakes the whole earth with holy thunder, who leaves us breathless in awe and wonder. The King of glory, the King above all kings. This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love. That you would take my place, that you would bear my cross, you would lay down your life, that I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Who rules the nations with truth and justice, shines like the sun in all of its brilliance. The King of glory, the King above all kings. Who brings our chaos back into order, who makes the orphan a son and daughter. The King of glory, the King above all kings. This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross, you would lay down your life, that I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy, worthy, worthy. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy is the King who conquered the grave. Worthy is the Lamb who was slain. Worthy, worthy, worthy. This is amazing grace. This is unfailing love, that you would take my place, that you would bear my cross, you would lay down your life, that I would be set free. Oh, Jesus, I sing for all that you've done for me. Worthy is the Your love, oh Lord, reaches to the heaven. Your faithfulness stretches to the sky. And your righteousness is like the mighty mountain. Yeah. And your justice flows like the ocean's tide. And I will lift my voice to worship you, my King. I will find my strength in the shadow of your wings. Your love, oh Lord, reaches to the heaven. Your faithfulness, it stretches to the sky. And your righteousness is like the mighty mountain. And your justice flows like the ocean's tide. And I will lift my voice to worship you, my King. I will find my strength in the shadow of your wings. And I will lift my voice to worship you, my King. I will find my strength in the shadow of your wings. 'Cause your love, oh Lord, reaches to the heaven. Your faithfulness, it stretches to the sky. And your righteousness is like the mighty mountain. Yeah. And your justice flows like the ocean's tide. And higher than the mountains that I face, stronger than the power of the grave, constant in the trial and the change. This one thing remains. This one thing remains. out on me. Your love, your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails and never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love, your love. Satisfies my soul, and I never ever have to be afraid. This one thing remains. Your love never fails, it never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love, oh, your love, oh, your love. In death, in life, I'm confident and covered by the power of your great love. My debt is paid. There's nothing that could separate my heart from your great love. My debt is paid. There's nothing that could separate my heart from your great love. 'Cause your love never fails, it never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love never fails, it never gives up, never runs out on me. Your love, your love. In death, in life, I'm confident, covered by the power of your great love. My debt is paid. There's nothing that can separate my heart from your great love. Amen. God bless you guys. Good morning. Let's greet one another and pass the peace this morning.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Woo, yeah, good response. Go Chiefs. Gonna hang in there. Well, my name's Vicki Kearns, and I'm doing the announcements this morning. So here's a few quick things for Micah Ministry. We're collecting donations of all sizes for kids, men and women. They need hoodies, white crew socks, backpacks, jeans, small pin light flashlights and batteries for flashlights, large women's purses. Hillside also for non-perishable donations. They also are in need of toilet paper, just basic things that we all take for granted that a lot of people just can't afford anymore. So think about that in your giving. If you're looking for some adventure, there's our Dungeons and Dragons group that meets on Saturdays and Sundays from 1 to 5, and talk to Abby Olson if you'd like to join. I hear it's really, really fun, and when I'm done doing some theater, I'm going to join that. So they started last Wednesday, so Wednesdays now through October 15th at 6 p.m. in the lobby. Join us for yoga and meditation. The class will run for 6 weeks. No experience, is necessary. If you missed one, you can join right in. So feel free to come, and I've been through it before, and it's really amazing. You'll learn some really good mindful meditation, and it's just some good exercise too. So for the ladies, our women's dinner is coming up this Wednesday, September 17th at 6 p.m. at Granite City. Be sure to save the date and invite a friend. RSVP to Debbie Leafblad. We're going to pass around the tablets, so if you are not on the church app, you can also sign in on the church app, or you can sign in on one of the tablets. If you have any prayer requests, praises, or anything you'd like to share, there are some cards in the seat backs, and you can fill those out and leave those in the baskets here up front or out there in the hallway. And if you would also like to respond to worship through giving, you can also, there are some envelopes there that you can put in the baskets and out in the hallway also. And we need money to keep the church going, so dig in your pockets. Give till it hurts. There you go. Give till it hurts. Okay, we're so thankful for your generosity and your prayers. And now to continue, let's go to the Lord with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours, now and forever. Amen. Pastor Fred.
All right. So good to see you this morning. You too. Chiefs have a rematch for the Super Bowl. So let's hope Friday in Brazil wasn't a prescient foreshadowing of the game today. Hopefully we turn it back around. But yes, we are going to be wrapping up the series today on Job that I started about 6 weeks ago. Job is a little over 40 chapters, and it's Hebrew poetry through and through. And some people think this is historically rooted. If so, this is actually probably one of the oldest books in the Bible, probably predates Moses and the Torah. And so Job is either a historical figure, or it could be a lengthy parable done in poetry like an epic poem. It's raising one of the most difficult questions that humanity has raised throughout its time here on this planet, right? And that is, why did good people suffer? And that's the real heart of this question. You know, Job was a man who loved God, who served God, who had integrity. He had gained wealth, and he used his wealth to care for the poor and the oppressed and the outcast and the marginalized, orphan, the widow. And so he was a man who followed after God's heart. He had a huge family, huge livestock, homes, and all of this. And in the first 2 chapters, we see that there's this play that happens in the heavens. And the adversary called the Satan, we translate that the adversary or the challenger. The challenger kind of roams around the earth and ends up saying, hey, what about Job over there? I wonder what he would do if he went through a lot of suffering. And it's almost like God in the heavens says, okay, have at it, challenger, go for it. Let's see what happens. And then a very short period of time, by the end of chapter 2, we see that Job loses his wealth. He loses 10 children to death, tornadoes, there's natural disasters, there's thieves and robbers. Just about every kind of thing that can go wrong goes wrong. And then after losing all that, he loses his own health and ends up having scabs and sores all over his body. He's using rocks to scrape off the scab. I mean, it's just the darkest kind of thing that could happen to a human. And then in chapter 3 of Job, we see that Job uses every vocabulary word in the Hebrew language for darkness. And it's just like dark, 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 dark. And he says, it'd been better if I'd never been born. And then he even goes to creatures of darkness and talks about like mythological creatures of darkness like the swamp monster, but he calls it the Leviathan. And he even raises the Leviathan with his cursing. He was an expert curser, right, in his darkness. But he never cursed God. And he continued to defend his faithfulness. And then his friends come in after all of this. They sit with him for quiet for 7 days, but then they start to speak. And basically what they speak is not all that helpful. It's like, Job, this is all your fault. Man, if you wouldn't have been such a rotten guy. And then he's like, Job's like going, I've been a man of integrity. I've served God. I mean, I might have slipped up here and there, but like, does a kid who doesn't clean his room get cancer to teach him a lesson, you know? So Job basically defends his integrity all the way through the book of Job. His friends try not to defend his integrity. They try to figure out, you deserve this some way or another. If you didn't deserve it, Job, then maybe it's because your kids deserved it, or maybe it's because it's something you're going to do in the future. And you're like going, what in the world? And so Job's friends don't help the situation any at all. And Job continues to defend his integrity and raise the question is, where is God's justice? Doesn't seem like life is fair. Have you ever felt like life's not fair? Why do good people suffer? And so we have this. And of course, we understand that sometimes in this world, people who are extremely wicked prosper. Then we understand that sometimes we make mistakes ourselves and we get consequences for that mistake. And then sometimes we're extremely upright and integrous like Job, and then horrible things happen to beautifully good people. And then there's always this thing that I really love that we call grace, and that's when we get stuff that we don't even deserve out of the loving heart of God. And so this is the play that's going out in this whole book of Job. We're wrestling with these deep questions, and one of the person that's on trial is God and God's justice. And how can God be involved in a world like this that has so much evil and heartache and desperation? We see this week after week after week in our world. Things were cranked up this week with political violence. I mean, we see this stuff over and over. Almost every day, it seems like in America, somebody's shooting somebody. And the innocent are suffering from that, right? And so these are deep, deep questions. All of us have wrestled with these. And Job is a classic piece of literature. In the end, God speaks. God is like silent all the way through. You have the opening chapter. Yeah, go ahead and have at him, challenger. And then God just silent, silent, silent. Job is speaking, and the friends are speaking, everybody's speaking. But then in chapter 38, God speaks. But Before I get to 38, I want to read one verse from chapter 12 of Job, because there's probably no other book in the Hebrew Bible that focuses on nature as much as Job does. Job guides us to learn from nature. So in Job chapter 12, verse 7, it says, "Just ask the animals, and they will teach you. Ask the birds of the sky, and they will tell you. Speak to the earth, and it will instruct you. Let the fish in the sea speak to you." Now, if you go on a mushroom trip, that really is helpful. But no, nature speaks. When you read Scripture, read Psalm 19, it tells us to look to nature and let nature speak. What does it say? What does it say? How many of you would consider yourself a nature lover? You know, I grew up without any video games, and didn't have cell phones, didn't have iPads, and basically we played outside. And I wanted to play outside like all the time. And I love to be outside. I love to be in the woods. I love to find snakes and lizards, and I love to hunt and do all kinds of stuff. I wanted to be outside all the time. My dad has a whistle that he does. I can't do it, but he does his mouth just like, and it's like one of the loudest whistles you could ever hear. And when I was a kid, Dad would step out on the porch when it was dinner time, and he would whistle. Now, I'd be out in nature playing, and all my friends would hear my dad's whistle, but I'd act like I didn't hear it because I didn't want to go home, right? I wanted to keep playing in nature, and I developed that nature, and when I was 14, started camping out, spending the night in tents and fishing and doing all that kind of stuff. And then my parents took me to Colorado when I was about 14 or 15, and I fell in love with the high mountains. Now, I love nature all the way around. I've done ocean surfing, I've done ocean sailing, ocean fishing. I learned how to surf on the East Coast. But my favorite thing is the mountains. I love the high mountains. I love the Swiss Alps. I love the Rocky Mountains all over America. I love the Blue Ridge Mountains, the Appalachians up and down the East Coast. I've been in the mountains of Africa and South America, and I just love mountains all over the world. And you know, it's interesting, what does nature teach us when we look at it? I mean, there's a part of nature that's entirely vicious, wouldn't you say? Like death is a common thing that happens moment after moment after moment after moment. There's vicious kinds of death. In my years in the Rockies, people always ask me, are you afraid of bears? And people who go to the Rockies, they always want to see bears from a distance. They don't want to be up close. You know, they want to be riding like maybe in a gondola and see one down over there. I have seen bears and encountered bears. I had one in Alaska chasing me out of my fishing hole that I was in. That was a grizzly. I've got that on, I got a little bit of it on video until I dropped my phone and ran out. You're not supposed to run, right? But one time years ago, I was camping out with a friend in the Wind River Range in Wyoming. And the grizzlies, this was back when the grizzly had started coming down into that part of the Rocky Mountains there in Wyoming. And so before we went in and hiked, there were all these signs about grizzly bears. And of course, black bears in the Rocky Mountains will run from you and are afraid of you unless you get between a mama and their cubs, right? But most of the time, black bears out in the wild will run from you. They're scared from you. But grizzlies are a little bit different personality type, right? And so grizzlies, of all the bear mauling things that you ever hear about, most of those happen with grizzlies, okay? So we were hiking up into the Wind River Range, and we did all the precautions. You know, we hung our food, we cooked our food away from the tents. we took our clothes off that we cooked in and hung them up in the bag, and then we put different clothes on so we didn't smell like the food in the tent, because there have been a lot of grizzly spottings in this particular area. Well, I was with my friend who's a pastor in Fort Collins. He can vouch for this story. We set our tent up, went to bed one night, and I had already fallen asleep on my sleeping pad down on the floor. And by the way, I've never taken a gun or bear spray with me for over 50 years, all over the Rockies, all over the world. Never done any of that, okay? But I did have a buck knife that my dad gave me, and I kept it kind of by my side, but that was about it. So I'm laying in the tent, I've fallen asleep, and all of a sudden I hear this, right outside the tent, right by my head, I hear this, like this noise kind of thing. And I kind of woke up and I thought about it for a minute. I thought, must be some raccoon or something, you know, because your hair absorbs smells from the fire, right? And so I thought something was smelling my hair through the thin nylon tent layer. And so I just took my fist like this, and I was kind of half asleep, and I just doubled it up, and I just went boom, like backwards. And it thudded into this soft but heavy thing. And it literally felt like a bear nose is what my brain immediately told me. And my adrenaline just went zing. And I just laid still there, and the bear went completely still too. And I was just like, I'm at this point I'm still guessing it's a bear, right? And all I could think of was this grizzly just take his big paw and just rip right through the tent. I'm laying next to my friend. So I laid there silently for a minute, and then all of a sudden I punched my neighbor, my friend Randy. And the bear still hadn't moved yet. There's a bear. He wakes up, and as we laid there in silence, all of a sudden that bear started to move. These are heavy animals, and we're sleeping on the ground. And you remember like the Jurassic Park scene where the dinosaurs shake and like the water shakes, and it felt like the ground was just like vibrating, and this thing it just moved away, right? Thank God. So the next morning we got up, and of course grizzly bear tracks, and we got up in the morning, and it was like, I punched a bear in the nose. And lived to tell about it. And I have a witness. He will vouch. But I could have died, right? Nature could have ripped me to pieces and had me for a meal. So what do we learn from nature? Well, I want to highlight just a couple of things. Job basically tells us, look at nature and learn from it. And in verse 2 and 3 and 4 of Job 38, God finally speaks. And God says, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me if you know so much. And then it's like the next 3 chapters, it's like God speaking, and Job just responds a little bit. And God just says, like, where were you when this happened in creation? Where were you when this happened in creation? And so the question of where's God when good people suffered actually doesn't ever get answered. But what God does is raise about 77, if you count them, about 77 more questions to answer that question. If you ever hung out with rabbis, this is the way they figure things out. They have a question, and then a good rabbi will ask 20 more questions to answer the question, and then leave you to make up your mind about what's going on, right? And so what happens in Job 38, 39, and 40 is it points to mystery and paradox, the nature of mystery and paradox woven into the very world that we live in, the very universe and this planet is woven with mystery and paradox, and God just points to it and raises questions, and points to it, raises questions, and 77 questions of mystery and paradox. And then the book ends And Job gets all of his, or much of his blessing restored. But it never really answers the question. It just raises more questions. 77 questions around the one question. Why do good people suffer? When we look at nature, there's fascinating. I love science, always have. One of the things that we learn from nature alone is that everything in this universe is interconnected and interwoven. So if you think about God's characteristic of omnipresence, God is present everywhere. Everywhere and everything in nature is all interwoven. Do you know that your body is 95% made out of stardust, the very materials where this universe exploded into existence? That's what you're made of. And we study from quantum physics, and I don't even understand it, but everything is interconnected and interrelated, and everything affects everything. It's the most bizarre thing in the world. You know, in the Christian faith, we have this doctrine called the Trinity, where God is one in three. And if you go back to the most ancient philosophers in history, one of the questions that philosophers have asked, way before even Jesus existed, was how is it that things are so different, and yet how is it that everything is still held together? How do you explain unity, and how do you explain diversity? And I like to say that when we think about deep truths, I like to say deep truths echo everywhere. Deep truths will echo in science, will echo in nature, will echo in psychology, will echo in every discipline that we have, and in history and in religion. And it's embedded in our faith. God is one God in three persons, unity yet diversity, and this is then what we're called to be a part of. Jesus prayed in John 17 that we would all be one as the Father and the Son are one. And that's that unity, but we're all different. There's no snowflake the same, and yet we're made up of the same stuff. We're totally interconnected. And yet we're diverse in every kind of way that we can think of, the diversity and the creativity of this world. If you read through Job chapter 38, 39, and 40, God just dives into the diversity of nature, the diversity of creation and birds and every kind of thing, living thing. And yet there's a unity to all of it. I think that we find out that we're interconnected and interrelated at every level, deep truth, unity and diversity. The very nature of reality in God is unity and diversity. You're a part of that. I think another thing we learn from Job is that in Job 38, chapter 3 was dark, 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 every Hebrew word of darkness. When you get into Job 38 and God asks all these questions, God dives into nature and it's like dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. There's paradox in this universe. Some things look like they're contradictory, but they're paradoxes. And these paradoxes we need to hold in non-dualistic tension with each other. There are things that are true that appear to be opposites. God created the darkness, and there's death and all of that kind of stuff that goes into that. And God created the light, and there's all of that goes into that. And these things play out together in this mystery and paradox. And there's light and dark and light and dark. There's death and destruction. There's beauty and there's creation. And there's love. And so these things exist together all the time. Death in this world always leads to new birth. There's not a single thing that dies in this planet or in the universe that doesn't then reconstitute and emerge into something else that brings forth life. Death and life go together some weird way. Deep truth echoes everywhere. And so at the core of this Christian faith, what do we have? We have a death and resurrection. God infleshed in a human being, bears the cross and the sin, dies, goes to the grave and darkness, cries out with the Psalm of Lament, my God, why have you forsaken me? And then resurrection, new life, new birth. The whys are still there. The questions abound. The mystery and paradox plays out throughout our life. And it's almost like we have a choice when we look at nature. Will we lean into the darkness, which I would even suggest that God is not separate from, but intertwines? But if you think about the worst part of the darkness that leads people into further darkness is fear and violence and hatred and more violence that leads to revenge and more hatred that leads to more revenge and violence that leads to violence. Right now we have a hard time disagreeing with somebody without hating. What kind of how many of you have ever lived with somebody and had a disagreement? Do you then take a gun and shoot them? Is this what we've come to, where we have a disagreement and then we lean into hatred and death and destruction and violence and more revenge and more hatred and more violence, and then that just leads to the cycle? Or do we lean into the beauty of nature and how love itself seems to be embedded in every part of nature? Do you know that evolutionary biologists today are actually beginning to teach us that it's not just survival of the fittest? You think about survival of the fittest and death and destruction and fear and violence and hatred and revenge and dominance, and whoever is the most aggressive wins, and then their genes win, all this kind of stuff. But evolutionary biologists today are beginning to discover and lean into this, that actually every species needs community to survive the harshness of the world around us. If you go into these trees that we're surrounded by out here, the trees have root tips, and underneath the ground there's fungi that connects all those root tips. And the trees pick up scents and chemistry through the leaves, and they'll go down through the root tips, and then the fungi will share the information with the other trees, and trees communicate with each other in community. And when one needs more water, they'll share water resources. And when bugs are attacking, they'll put out chemicals through the leaves that ward off those attacks of the bugs. And they communicate together, and we now know that trees survive better together. And if you go into every kind of species, like meerkats, there's a beautiful little documentary on meerkats. You will actually fall in love with these little creatures. They live under the ground, and they help each other. They defend each other. They care for each other. If one goes missing, others will seek out and try to find him. Meerkats survive better together. It's like in the midst of all of the death and the chaos, there's woven into this universe love and beauty and creativity and grace and forgiveness and healing and post-traumatic growth and resurrection. So if you want to learn from nature, why don't we be the kind of people who lean into that part of nature? One of the first bands I listened to as a kid, and then I started picking my own music, was before I got into prog rock. I listened to John Denver. Now, I got to a certain age where I thought, that's a little corny to be into John Denver. But as I grow older, I get back into John Denver. And one of the things I realize about John Denver, that I've loved about John Denver, is his love for nature. Think about sunshine on my shoulders, Rocky Mountain High, sweet surrender. Think about country road as a metaphor, almost heaven, West Virginia, Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah rivers. Life is old there, older than the trees, younger than the mountains, blowing like a breeze. Country roads, nature, God of unconditional love who allows freedom at every level in his creatures, because love is not dominating, love is not forceful, love is allowing humans and all creation to flourish, and yet that freedom can bring about all kinds of stuff, right? But in the midst of all of the death and destruction, there's always the opportunity to choose love, and to choose life, and to choose breath, and to choose forgiveness, and to choose grace and beauty and creativity. And it's like Job doesn't answer any of the hard questions, but he leaves us in this beautiful mystery and paradox and tension of, hey man, how are you going to show up in this world? We need each other. Evolutionary biologists now talk about survival of the friendliest. We need each other.
You want to hear a couple things I've learned? Yeah. It's about all this I'm trying to carry. You know, thinking back, kind of reminds me of Job and the load he tried to carry. Strong, strong, godly man, that Job. I'm going to share with you a few things so your load doesn't get too much to carry, like mine did. As you can see by the size of it, it's pretty heavy. You see, the first thing that I learned is when you carry a load that's heavy, you can't carry it by yourself. It gets too much to bear. You know, I just got tired. I couldn't hold on to it anymore. I just dropped it because I needed to rest. Y'all, I was tired. I was just so tired. I couldn't hold on to it anymore, and everything started falling out, and I could not keep control. I ruined everything. And I hurt myself pretty bad in the meantime. So I learned when I try to carry the weight of my world on my back, I have to stop, drop, and rest because it gets too much. Second thing I learned when carrying my load is I cannot go fast. If I try to go too fast, I can't. I have to slow down to stay in control. This one time, I carried it way too far, and I got really tired, and I just said, if I can just go faster, if I just work harder, I can finally get rid of all this on my back, and I'll be done with it. But you guessed right. I had another accident. Not only did I hurt myself, I hurt the people that I love the most. And that was bad. So I've learned when I'm carrying my load, I must go slow to stay in control. The third thing is, when I'm carrying this load and I'm at my maximum weight. I have to keep control of my balance. I must watch every step I take, because I'll fall. You know, the more we carry, it gets to be too much. Our life becomes overwhelmed by this weight. Everything and everyone else takes a back burner. This load, you see, it became my life. And everything else, well, you know. But the most important thing I've learned, if you can have someone to share this load with, I can go faster. I need to concentrate less, and I'm not alone. Whether you're dealing with grief, depression, addiction, trauma, or just everyday life gets too much for you, reach out. When someone else is there to share your load, it's much easier. Y'all, Job didn't walk alone, and neither should we. Thank you.
Time will tell. Wait for now. Rest assured and stay a while. Stay a while. Open up your bleeding eyes. Demonstrate that you're alive, and let the beating of your heart echo as you fall apart. Open up your bleeding eyes. Demonstrate that you're alive, and let the beating of your heart fill the places torn apart. And leave your pain all behind. Rise again, 'cause you're alive. You're alive. You're alive. You're alive. Open up your brand new eyes, giving you 'cause you're alive, and let the music
Alyssa, and Sam wrote that song. And yeah, isn't that beautiful? Beautiful. We close with communion every Sunday, and this is a time where you can just sit and meditate, but if you'd like to come forward to receive communion, you can do that. I'm going to have our servers come up here in just a moment, and when everybody's standing, I'll invite you to come forward. You can come to the center section, go to the server in front of your section, and circle back around to your seat like that. And when you get up here to the front, you can tear the bread, dip it, take it right here at the front. There's also a sealed communion container if you prefer that. The music and the with the wine and the wafer. The music and the wafer. Yeah, that works too. And then there's a gluten-free wafer there as well. So let's stand together. We close with this image of death and resurrection, right? I mean, it's the very nature of the universe and all that is around us, and at the very heart of the gospel of Jesus, his death and resurrection. So Jesus was gathered with his disciples the night before he was crucified, and they were reflecting on that beautiful transition, that exodus out of slavery in Egypt to freedom and new life. And Jesus took the elements of that Passover meal, the wine and the bread, and transformed it through his life, death, and resurrection into the hope that we hold to, and this hope of love and creativity and beauty and forgiveness and grace. All is beautiful in this world, right? And so that's what we come to the table, and it's a table of love where everyone is welcome. There's nobody excluded. So we come to this table of love. As Jesus was gathered with his disciples, he took the bread, he gave thanks, he broke it. And Jesus said, "This is my body broken for you. Do this in remembrance of me." In the same way, Jesus took the cup of wine after supper and said, "This cup is the new covenant between God and you, sealed by the shedding of my blood. Do this in remembrance of me as often as you drink it," or to take and drink. So I invite you to come forward to receive communion, or sit and meditate if you'd like.
There's a table you've prepared for me in the presence of my enemy. It's your body, your blood is shed for me. This is how I fight my battles. There's a table you've prepared for me in the presence of my enemy. It's your body, your blood you shed for me. This is how I fight my battles. And I believe you've overcome, and I will lift my song of praise for all you've done. This is how I fight my battle. This is how I fight my battle. This is how I fight my battle. This is how. This is how I fight my battle. This is how I fight my battle. This is how I fight my battle. This is how. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. I'm surrounded by you. It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you. This is how I fight my battle. This is how.
Okay, well, I want a quick reminder, Debbie Leafblad. Debbie, raise your hand. She's back here. She's going to be leading a women's, just a fun fellowship night this Wednesday night. So if you'd like to join that, remind us one more time where that's at, Debbie. Granite City at what time? 6 o'clock. Yeah, just show up. In Zona Rosa, Granite City in Zona Rosa. Okay. And then this Wednesday night, I have part 2 of a 6-week series on yoga meditation. And we do about 30 minutes of yoga. There's also chair yoga for people who don't want to get down on the floor. So come on out, and then I do a short teaching on mindful meditation, and then we practice some meditation as well. I want to close, I think, with something that's always needed in our life, in our world. Let's stand. And I just want to read as a benediction from the love chapter. How's that? Paul writes, "If I could speak all languages of earth and of angels, but did not love others, I would only be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I had the gift of prophecy, and if I understood all of God's secret plans and possessed all knowledge," Job just left us with more questions, right? But if I had all of that, and if I had such faith that I could move mountains, but didn't love others, I would be nothing. If I gave everything I have to the poor and even sacrificed my body, I could boast about it, but if I didn't love others, I would have gained nothing. Love is patient and kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. It does not demand its own way. It's not irritable. It keeps no record of being wronged. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up. Love never loses faith. It's always hopeful and endures through every circumstance. Let's infuse that into our world as we leave this place, everywhere we go. Blessings. If you'd like prayer, come on up to the front. Otherwise, go in that love and peace, spread it everywhere. God bless you. Great to see you today.